welcome back to the Gen X Remix Midlife, Laughs, and Next Acts. I'm Tabatha Jones, your host and the Corporate Escape Sherpa. And my question for you today, friends, is have you ever felt stuck in your current story, wondering if it's too late for a rewrite? Today, our guest Amanda Johnson is here to prove that it is never too late for a rewrite. She shares her story of going from an overwhelmed teacher to an empowered storytelling mentor by remixing her very own narrative. So what's the next chapter you're ready to remix? Let's dive into the interview and welcome Amanda. All right, Amanda, welcome to the Gen X Remix. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited about this conversation about remixing.
Oh, I love remixes so much. So it's going to be a really great episode. I'm intrigued by what you do. Let's start out with my favorite guest question, which is, what is your remix story?
Well, I have lots of them, but I think the first one is probably where I should start, and that is, um, I was, I on the trajectory, went to college to become a journalist, got into the honors program, and thought, you know what, history is kind of really important to this whole idea of raising the next generation to be able to think through stories, these great stories and philosophies that undergird our civilization, because that's what I was wrestling with in that classic books program. And so I decided to become a history teacher. And that was a really interesting journey. the
Nice.
education, the education part of it was really fun. I love learning child development, psychology, curriculum development, all of that stuff was super easy for me. And then I got into the classroom. And I don't know if this is true where you are in the world, but I was in a really, really tough district and a really tough neighborhood in that district. And at the school, all of the teachers who'd been there for a long time decided that they would just send all of the students they didn't wanna work with to the classroom with the new teacher.
Hmm.
And, so I had kids lighting up bongs in my classroom, and I mean, it was crazy what was going on in my room, and so I was using story to connect with them and try to empower them, but it was really disheartening because I realized at that point that the next generation was kind of in trouble, that a lot of them just they couldn't see past high school.
Wow.
And so I worked so hard just to try to, earn their trust and move them forward and figure out what was interesting to them. And then I realized, you know what, I don't have it in me. I can't do this at the speed and intensity and integrity that I want to and still have anything left for my kid when I get home. And he was a toddler at the time, and I thought maybe I'll come back. And so I left the education system and just had this opportunity to start leaning into my one of my easy gifts that I had cultivated through high school and college, which was writing. And I became an online writing instructor, and I really enjoyed that. I could do that at all hours of the day when he was sleeping or napping or playing, and it worked really, really well. And then I had this opportunity to go out and start telling people about this great program I was working for. And that was the remix. I walked into a room full of entrepreneurs, and they said,
Mm.
"We need you to help us fix what we have been doing. We don't need you to teach us how to write well. We need you to fix because it's not working." So I
Yeah.
opened up this little editing business, and I ended up looking at all of their manuscripts and making them better. And I mean, who goes to school to become an editor? I don't know that I'm not sure that's like a major, right? But eventually I realized, I really want to help people from the beginning. And so that was that first retreat that I experienced, because I realized I had to kidnap people. I had to kidnap them with consent into another place to get them to really drop everything else in their lives and think about what they were up to. Um, and that's when I realized, okay, this is actually the convergence of everything that I have gained across my lifetime experience with 27 years old. It wasn't huge, but my lifetime of experience and all my education, I got to use all of my superpowers in one place. And that was super exciting. I was like, yes, I like this. I like the sound of this remix.
Wow. That is an amazing remix. I giggle about the teaching. I don't have the patience for other people's children. So I can't even imagine being in a whole classroom of them. And especially when I think back to when my son was in middle school, I was like, seriously? I understand why some animals eat their young. Like, I don't understand what's happening at this point in your life, but it's not working for me.
It's
And
true.
so, God bless those teachers who are amazing and can get in there every day, but there definitely are those of us who don't have that
Mhm.
specific set of, well, I don't have that specific gift. But I also imagine, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, I am one now. I also imagine that we're a lot like kids in some ways, as far
Yes.
as that squirrel brain and the activity and so many great ideas and getting them all narrowed down. So, how was that for you? And how did you kind of get people to hone in on where they needed to focus for you?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of individuals who were coming mostly from helping professions. A lot of people from the mental health space who'd been clinicians or working in the system in different ways, people who had been in education. So they were coming from those systems, and saying like me, like, I this isn't quite it, but I've learned a lot and I have something, I've gained a ton of skill. I'm already kind of mentoring people in my field, and I'm hearing myself say the same thing over and over again. So I think I should write a book about this and kind of bring all of this. I would use the term elixir, right? Like all of this at the end of some of their heroes' journeys, they were bringing this medicine back to the younger professionals in their domain and wanting to help them. So it is, it's very interesting to watch these individuals who have such mastery, high performing, overachieving, award winning people who then get into this project of writing a book that's alien, and it's almost like you just watch the mastery leave their brain and go out the door. They feel like novices and children, right? Like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm thinking, you've already written a dissertation, like you have a doctorate or, your master's thesis. This isn't really much different, but it was because there was this element of having to share a personal story, share their own hero's journey of coming to that point and wanting to other people to be able to overcome similar challenges or achieve similar things. And there were always these little pieces in their story that made them wiggle a lot like those teenagers. You're right. It's like, I don't, checking out, putting their earphones in, building a wall of technology around them. I've seen it all in all of those rooms. So, yeah.
I think I've done it all. So that's
Yes.
why I
Yes.
recognize it. But yeah, it's so interesting. And I see this too with people who they're escaping corporate. So, I come from the telecom and tech industry. And it's really interesting how much your identity gets balled up into that and how much you know and how much maybe you were mastering something all of these years and decades. But then you pop out and become an entrepreneur, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm starting over. I don't know what to do. I don't know who am I? I got to look at all these people that are going to tell me who I am, and hopefully I can figure it out. It just,
Yeah.
from experience, it's a very confusing time. So
It
I can
is.
imagine.
Mhm.
And I also imagine that telling their story can be hard because it's trying to figure out maybe which parts people want to know versus which parts sound, ooh, is that bragging or should I say that? Like a lot of self doubt that comes into play. So, what are some methods that you use to help people kind of loosen up and get those stories out?
Well, at the first retreat, it was a lot of, I'd give a lot of questions and prompts to just try to draw some of the information out. And then on the third day, I would ask them out to kind of consolidate everything that they had pulled up into their personal story and share it out with the space. And it was such an interesting experience to watch them, because you would see these moments of their mastery coming through. You would hear the voice, like that sense of groundedness and confidence, and then you would listen to them veer off into a story that a part of their story that they weren't used to telling, and thinking like, I don't know if I could, if this is going to ruin my credibility or enhance it, right? And so I've found all different ways, because to your point with that identity, you know um, getting in there and trying to really see it for what it is, because a lot of times when we're wrapped up in it, we're only seeing ourselves kind of one dimensionally, almost as if like this is the role we play while we're here. Right. And then we kind of leave that at the office or we leave that at the desk and then we go back and we be the rest of us or something. And so I had to figure out interesting ways to do this. And one of the things that I did was actually an art project. Because if I asked you, um, what are the 7 most defining moments of your life? What would immediately come up? Would it be all of the high, exciting moments like these, these ones where you're cheering for yourself or people were cheering for you? Or would they actually include a lot of the hard stuff? And what I found was that people only had that one dimension. It was one or the other. And
Interesting.
being a whole person and having a whole story is being, all of that grit, right? That comes
Mhm.
from the hard stuff, and then all of the grace and the exciting stuff that comes from all of the wonderful things that happen to us or that we get to achieve. And so I found that an art project actually got them out of their left brain that was trying to organize and be really clear and choose the exact right things. And it gave them the opportunity to just kind of let their right brain give them information that had been sequestered. It had
Mm.
been kind of kept away from them for a little bit of time. And that was a really interesting piece because I think the writing does that too. It taps you into that more creative right brain. But even then, you're thinking about it, you're editing, you're deleting, you're scratching, rolling it up, throwing it away, you know. But the when you're in a space of again, like I don't really know, I stick figures okay, Amanda? Yeah, they're great, and it just kind of takes away all of that need to have that perfection show up
Mm.
and just like, I'm just gonna see what comes out of this. It's really, really cool exercise.
I bet perfection is such a pain, honestly. I mean, we all struggle with it, I know.
Yes.
But just thinking about even the writing journey, like
Mhm.
the amount of rewrites and changes, and should I say that's, and it can get overwhelming. So I love
Mhm.
that you've created that space.
Yeah.
One of the things you say, as I was stalking all of your socials and getting in your information, you talk about storytelling being really a
Mhm.
vital part of preparing for your next act. What
Yeah.
does that mean to you, and why?
Well, I think, back to this idea of identity and the roles that we play, we think in narrative, right? This is the scene that I'm in. This is the role that I'm playing. And sometimes we don't think that about ourselves, but we can absolutely experience that when we're telling a story, right? And we realize, oh, we're telling this story and the room isn't engaged. Someone's not listening, they're not leaning in. What is this? Oh, I need to bring some storytelling in, right? I need to bring them into the scene with me and really help them to feel what I was feeling or think what I was thinking during that time. And I think that the power of story and storytelling is that we get to really pay attention to some of the details that we don't pay attention to in our everyday kind of automated, get the checklist done uh way that we operate, like here's all the things
Yeah.
I have to get done and we don't really get the opportunity to sink in to the details of our lives and notice things. And when you have to write a scene and bring somebody in or think about how to tell a story and bring someone into that moment, you start to pay attention to those details. And that's when you really get the opportunity to see, like, oh, why do I say that in every single one of these scenes?
Mm.
Is that exactly how that happened? Or there was another person in that scene. I completely forgot about it. What did their experience, how did that impact me? And so I think the opportunity of storytelling, especially writing the storytelling, is that we have to work a little bit harder and pay more attention to the details. And then when we're thinking about our next act, I've watched people literally write themselves into the next act. The story that they came in with brought them up to the 80 or 90% mark of the story that was going to be in that book. And there was this really amazing opportunity in the process of looking back at their story and getting really clear on all of those details that they were able to say, "You know what? There's still some things in my life right now that I'm not happy with. Like there's some things happening in this act or this chapter that I would like to change." And they start to see the moments where they have power because they've written about a whole bunch of them where they gave away their power. They said yes when they wanted to say no, or they walked away when they should have stayed and confronted somebody. And
Mm.
so seeing all of that gives them access to a better script for the next scene.
Wow. That is so enlightening. And we give our power away all the time. I know that when we write things down, even, informally, just journaling or whatever, it can really help shift the perspective. So I imagine you see a lot of people having those perspective
Mhm,
shifts too,
mhm,
as they write.
yeah.
What are some of the things that you find to be the biggest blocks when it comes to storytelling?
I think that we have I partially because of the way that our culture is and the way our education system is set up, it doesn't exactly cultivate curiosity or creativity, right? It's very machine-like, information in, information out. And so when I say something like write a scene, have you ever done that before? No. So again, you feel like a novice. And then secondly, again, that ability to slow down and get curious about what it looked like back then, even though you have this memory, but the memory itself can feel a little one dimensional. And so as you really let yourself go back in there, and you have to set the scene to have someone really feel what was going on for you. I told you about a classroom full of a bunch of teenagers lighting up bongs, talking about how one of their brothers had been the victim of a gang situation the night before, right? Like I can pull you into that classroom with me and have you really smelling the smoke coming, like, what are we doing over there? And noticing the expression on the face of the girl when I said, wow, that was a really good question. You're so clever. And she was like, literally no one in my life has told me I've ever been smart. Moments like that really allow people to connect, but we have to do it first. And again,
Mm.
I think that I haven't been in corporate, but I have been in systems before, and there is that kind of machine-like quality to it. You get in, you have your list for the day, you check things off, you maybe interact with people cordially and connect, do your best with the team, but it does kind of feel a little bit less like curiosity is really at play. And I think that's one of the things we just don't have the muscle for it.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I'd say, in some ways, corporate days are very much the same. They're
Mhm.
very structured, start time, stop times. Like, well, there's really not a stop time. Let's face it. All of those things,
Very
right? And the
similar to
way,
entrepreneurship.
exactly, the way that you engage with people and how you hold yourself and how you
Mhm,
present yourself, and it does become kind of that part of your identity. And then you start losing a lot of the creative side. I was just having this conversation with a girlfriend recently, who has also joined me in this entrepreneurial journey. And she's like, I just wanted to do this thing. And my creative side was just, she's like, I could think all the logical pieces. I
mhm,
could put the project together. I could not get the thing done in a
mhm.
creative way. I couldn't get the graphic or the it's like, it'll come back. It's just a
Yeah,
muscle that you haven't used. It's like,
yeah.
my abs when I haven't been to the gym. They'll come back. Maybe.
Will they though? No, just kidding.
Right. Will they though? Let's be real. No, they won't. But maybe that little arm thing will look good. I don't know. So,
Yeah,
okay, I
yeah.
can
Good
imagine.
analogy.
Yeah. It's just perspective
Mhm,
and that. But to your point, being able to tell that story and as an entrepreneur, getting people really engaged in your story
mhm,
is important. Do you work with people who are not writing entire books, but they're working more on shorter, maybe marketing strategies and those
mhm.
types of things too?
Yeah, yeah, just basic brand stories, like, why are but that was one of the things that surprised me at the beginning when I was working with individuals, even on the books, is I would say, "Why do you care about this message?" And they would just look at me like wide-eyed. I just care about it. Yeah, but why? Because you struggled with this thing before or because, that sort of thing and that narrative piece. Once that narrative piece gets locked into place, ooh, so much more power when you are trying to connect with an audience, trying to let them know what your mission actually is and how they can play a part in it, right? It's all narrative. It's all narrative conversation. Right?
Yeah.
I'm living in this story right now. I'm writing the next chapter in entrepreneurship um and so, it's just so interesting I think to think about how we've been shaped to really think about starts and stops and like this chapter is closed and it's over. Like actually no, it shaped you into who you are today and just leaving it behind is not exactly in anyone's best interest because again you could lose access to mastery or superpowers or those sorts of things or the whole reason why you got inspired with this new project to begin with.
Yeah. Remembering the why is so important in anything you do, right? The why did you start a business? Why did you leave corporate? Why did you leave teaching? Why did you write that book?
Mhm.
Why is what keeps us on point and keeps us moving forward, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you forget your why, you can get lost really quickly. And I know we don't have all day for me to share the time that I let my why go for a minute, but it did not go well for me. It's kind of lost all kinds of momentum and it was pretty crazy. And when it comes to writing a book, I know I actually published one last year, but it just needed to get out of me. I think that some people
Mhm.
get to that point where it's like,
Yeah.
I just need to get this out, and here's why, and what it's going to bring to the world once it's in on paper. So tell me a little bit about, to you, for people who really understand their why and they know the reason they want to go forward, what is the benefit of writing their story?
Well, I think that one of the main benefits is that you get to really see it. Because again, we look back and we see certain moments, but we don't see all of the moments that shaped us. And when you take that time to sit down, I don't know what your experience was like. I want to flip the interview and ask you about the process of writing a book and what you gained. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that people have those two identities, right? So I'm in corporate or I'm working inside of this system and I have this identity or this persona that I'm living into every day. And then I have this other thing that's happening on the side. It's a hobby or it's an interest or it's something that is really soul nourishing. And then one day I wake up and I realize that's actually the reason why I was successful over here, but I wasn't exactly bringing that forward. And so now, as I'm thinking about this opportunity to help others, to turn around and help those people who may still be in the system, trying to help them escape corporate or another system or figure out a more productive, healthy way of living inside the system and driving it forward toward change. You have to think about all of those different things that were part of the story that were actually driving you forward. And so often it's not what you immediately think of. My one a good example of this, one of my first clients, sales coach. And I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't had the opportunity to hang out with her in networking meetings because, I was looking at her content and it was great. 9 steps to sell with intention. I mean, it was just this really powerful bit of content. And I had this feeling like something is missing, but I don't know what it is. And I had met her at this networking meeting. So I just started to pay attention in between our coaching sessions and I'd watch her. And I went back to the manuscript and I said, there's something missing in here and it's how you connect with people.
Mm.
Now that is an essential piece of figuring out how to sell with intention is that connection piece was one of her easiest and most natural superpowers. So one, she didn't put any value on it. And two,
Interesting.
because of that, she didn't put it in the book. And it was that ingredient that as I watched her move through rooms, I thought, nobody can sell if they don't make that first connection. This needs to be like at the core of what you're bringing forward, but she didn't value it because it was something that was so easy for her. So I think writing your story and really having to sit in those scenes of what does it look like when I'm actually trying to engage someone and enroll them in a vision or in a program, yeah, that connecting piece is kind of important. So we can leave important things out
Yeah,
as we're trying to bring some medicine into the world through a book.
I love that. And it's it's just a fact, right? Some things are so obvious to us because we just do them and they just come
Doesn't
naturally and it's just part
everybody?
of the practice, right? But then somebody goes to implement the directions you gave them, like,
Yes.
my directions to a recipe, right? It's just a
Yeah.
little of this, a splash of that, blah blah blah, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay. Well, you forgot to mention the, that I needed to preheat the oven." And that's
Right.
exactly what that story is, right? It just comes naturally to me to flip the oven on.
Mhm.
I don't know why
Yeah.
I'm using a cooking analogy. I don't cook. I just picked that one up just this minute. I'm like, I don't do that very often. But anyway, but a good analogy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But it's
or
just
it's
so
a
obvious
recipe.
that you would
Mhm,
preheat the oven, just
mhm,
like when you're working on a sales conversation and you're kind of building that relationship, that connection is number one. But
mhm.
it's probably just something she was doing so naturally and comfortably. She just thought, she
Everybody
probably didn't
does,
even
right?
think, oh, duh, everybody does it. She probably didn't even think that. It was just
Yeah.
so obvious. Like, that's how it is.
And she needed someone like me who
Yeah.
didn't have that skill. That was not a natural superpower for me, especially in, very public networking sort of settings. I
Mhm.
was more of a wallflower. And so that was the part of her recipe that I needed. Like,
Yeah.
why isn't that in this book? Because all the other stuff makes sense, but without that, I can't make those things work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How great that you were able to observe and
Mhm.
point that out so quickly
Yeah.
too. I mean, that's truly amazing. And I'm going to go squirrel. I'm going to come back because I was going to go squirrel down that whole rabbit trail. I don't even know. I feel like we've actually spoken about cooking. So I'm taking that as I cooked this week.
Check it off the list.
It's checked. So good. And so when a client comes to you for some help or they want to work and join your program, what are some things that many of them have in common? Some common maybe struggles or challenges or solutions they're seeking?
Well, a lot of them, like I said, they have no challenges in their professional domain except that they're ready to change it, right? It's like something has become uncomfortable and it's time for them. They've outgrown it. They need a new sort of experience that way. But also because they are super busy professionals, they need time. And
Mhm.
so time and prioritizing this is one of those big pieces that I see people struggle with. How many times has someone written, I'm going to write my book this year. I'm gonna launch my brand this year on a New Year's resolution list, and then they get to the next January 1st and think, "Oh, still didn't do that. Dang it, this year." you know? And
Mhm.
I think a part of that is because, again, we're moving and grooving in our normal routes, and we really have to figure out how to interrupt those patterns and create the space for the stuff that we want to create in the world. And if you're moving from a place of absolute mastery and then putting yourself in a place where you feel like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, then I would say you need time. You need to figure out how to break frame from the automatic that you're in every day to really prioritize this. And then also have a guide, because chances are that you had someone helping you, mentoring you at different phases early on in your journey. And so why wouldn't you also need that in this totally new territory, right? Like,
Yeah.
I could confidently write a thesis because it's technical, but now I have to connect with an audience, and that's a new skill. Why not find someone who can help you build that skill? And then, the other thing I think is true for people, especially when you're moving from an environment like that into solopreneurship, it can be very lonely. You
Mm.
have this idea, this vision, this mission that like no one else sees yet, and because of that, you have to hold on to it really tight and keep believing in it because no one else sees it enough to believe in it just yet. And I think that putting yourself in a space with other people who are in that, who've done it before, who understand that little bit of that stretch and that loneliness that can accompany it, but also with other people who are in the stretch right now
Yeah.
is really empowering because we can feel like aliens. I was even though I came from a family of entrepreneurship, when I said I'm going to go do this thing instead of be a teacher, they all looked at me like I was crazy. Like, why would
Oh,
you?
I
You're going to
know.
write a book? Like, who do you know who wrote a book before you did that wasn't already in this domain? Right? It's like these are new things that we wonder, can I do this? I don't,
Yes.
who do I have in my space who can kind of, my dad used to use this term about increasing your believability, pulling that goal a little bit closer to you. So we get into the space and we think we want to change the world with a message. And then we look out and we see Brene Browns and Lisa Nichols and Jack Canfield's. And that is like so far away, right? So if you can get into spaces where you have people who are a little bit closer to where you're at on the journey, but still creating impact, still creating income, still getting their message out, like all of a sudden you realize, okay, I don't have to be that yet. I can just work on this. And that's an easier, faster stretch.
Oh my gosh. You literally just spoke all my language, sister. Like that
Yay.
was all of it. And I feel like people try to make big pivots, big
Mhm,
remixes. They go on the entrepreneurial journey. They start writing the book and doing all the things, trying to do it themselves.
mhm.
And the first thing you said is true. Like it doesn't happen because it's not really a goal. It's just I'm going to do this.
Yeah,
And so there's no skin in the game.
yeah,
But what I've found is it leads to a lot of wasted time, money, and energy.
so
And
much.
the money, right? Initially, oh, I just can't invest in a coach. But then by the time you have spent every $27 here on these little things and
Yeah.
every $1,000 on that thing and every $650 on that thing, you're like, oh my gosh, I could have just worked with this coach
Mhm,
that knows what she's doing
mhm.
and I could have been done by now
So
and still
true.
had money in my savings. So I love that you bring that up about, getting with someone who can guide you through it and really help you, but then also bringing into that sense of community piece because it is lonely when you start out on your own journey and people don't understand it. I have
Yeah.
a really tight friend circles, but a lot of my friends don't understand. They don't understand why would you leave this great job you had at corporate? You were
Mhm.
so powerful. You did these things to go do this. And then they kind of don't really look down on it, but kind of do, I think.
Yeah.
Like it's a little hobby and pat me on the head sometimes in their minds.
Mhm.
I'm sure it just feels that way. It's just me being snarky, but it just like I don't think everybody understands it. And it does start feeling really lonely. And no matter how much people love you, sometimes they just can't understand you.
Yep.
So getting into a group like that where it's more empowering and you can
Yeah.
say what's on your mind and you can talk about the literally the bullshit you've been going through trying to
Yep.
get something done, right? Or how
Mhm.
you've just been stuck in your own way because you can't figure this thing out. And as soon as you say it, someone in that group's like, oh, yeah, I did that. Here's how I
Mhm.
fixed it. Or the coach can say, have you tried? Have you
Mhm.
considered? And
Mhm.
give you some really
Yeah.
great suggestions. So,
Or
oh my
like you were
gosh,
saying before, maybe this just truly isn't your superpower. And so you need to think in terms of no hero finishes an epic journey by themselves. It's
yeah,
never your superpowers is going to make all of that happen. There's always going to
absolutely.
be mentors showing up and allies showing up with these different gifts and skills. And why not use them so that you can just do the parts that you're great at and that you absolutely love? I would
Yeah,
never be on social media if it wasn't for our creative avatar. Like, there's no way that I would do it. And it's something that is necessary to be visible and move my business forward and all of this. But I would much
yeah,
rather be doing these conversations. So I said, hey, I'll do the podcasting thing. You handle all of that stuff because it will never get
mhm,
done. And I don't want to learn it. I don't wanna learn it.
exactly.
I would rather spend my time doing this and connecting with people and partnering with people who are stuck and don't have the superpowers that I do.
I love that. That's so great. Oh my gosh. Well, I know that we are coming up on time. So instead of keeping our guests listening for the next 5 days, because I have a billion more questions and working through this whole storytelling piece, but I'm sure some of our listeners have heard this conversation, have heard some of your great advice and really what you're doing. If they want to connect with you and kind of continue this conversation and learn more, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would say go over to savedbystory.house. And if you're interested, hit forward slash four shadows, FORE shadows. I'll give you that link so you can put it in the show notes. But that is full of a whole bunch of free content that people can kind of dip their toes in and see what they enjoy and see how we operate and see if we're the right next step for a conversation about helping with any sort of partnering from inspiration impact.
Outstanding. We'll make sure that's all in the show notes. And then before we sign off, what is one thing that you'd like to either share with our listeners that maybe you haven't shared yet, or one piece of advice you'd like to give them to head out with?
I would say think about it in terms of building safety. So I use the metaphor all the time of the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, and it has to go upside down and look at the world differently, which is super uncomfortable. All that resistance, you want to run away. What's the thing to do? Build your cocoon. So, what would make you feel safe enough to take that next step to whether it's write a book or launch a new program or take that leap out of corporate, whatever it is, what are those elements, the relational elements, the spiritual, practices, the allies that you need to support you through the process, the guides, and build the safety net for yourself so you're willing to take the leap and dive in.
I love it. Thank you so much. It's been a
Mhm.
pleasure having you here today, Amanda. And I do look forward to staying connected and seeing where you're at in the future. I am a bit of a stalker, so you'll probably see me
Oh,
all over
good.
your socials. All right. Well, thank you again,
Thank
and
you.
we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
That was so much fun. And I hope you resonated with Amanda's story and understood why telling your story in your own words is so important. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Gen X Remix. If you're ready to start rewriting your own story, be sure to check out Amanda's resources and contact information in the show notes. And if you're feeling inspired to remix your career, send an email or grab a copy of my free flip book and let's start planning your escape. No matter what you choose to do in your next chapter, make sure it's your best chapter. Until next time, friends.